Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Nolan Kelly here with Ben Rasa. We're going to talk a little NFL DFS Week One DraftKings FanDuel. It's here, Ben. Are you ready for the season to start?
Oh, I'm ready. We were just talking preseason is fun, but my God, it's certainly not the same. And it's less than a week away. We're ready to go. Obviously, what we want to talk about here is there's some major storylines that are going to impact not just DFS but the league in general, with some holdouts, with some injuries right off the bat.
Yeah, some huge storylines. So we just wanted to take a quick look at what specifically you and I are going to do with some of these holdouts and injuries that we're seeing so far. Let's start out with quarterback, where the big news last week was Andrew Luck is now retired. Jacoby Brissett is taking over, and he's sitting there just 4,400 on DraftKings and $6,000 on FanDuel. He was the quarterback 20 in the year that he took over for Andrew Luck. Do you think we're going to see a recurrence of that kind of a season from Brissett? And what are you doing with him in week one at that price point?
I think he's poised to have a fine year. The Colts were set up to be a competitor, and a lot of it was because of luck. But it's not like they don't have weapons around Brissett. Having said that, Week One at the Chargers is not the ideal situation. I know Derwin James isn't going to be there, but Bosa and Ingram will be, and that pass rush. So it's someone that I don't think I'm going to be going to too often, even with a very appealing price tag.
That's where I'm at too. It's so enticing at that price tag because when you start to go up the list of players on these on DraftKings and FanDuel, you pretty much have to go a full $1,000 more before, at least I do, before I get to someone else that I actually want to play. So that savings is just huge. But you're right. The problem is you got the Chargers. They are on the road in Los Angeles. Hey, I didn't screw that up. So this is a really tough matchup. I think the only way to approach this is basically to view it as a contrarian stack or possibly as a one-off in cash games. I think that Derwin James was one of the best defenders of the tight end position last year. If he's out, you could sneakily put in maybe a little Eric Ebron stack, and maybe that will go completely underowned in tournaments. But for me, this is nothing more than a flyer tournament play that I don't know. I don't know how owned he's going to be though. That's the question. If he's 1% owned, it's pretty easy to go overweight. But I have a feeling he's going to get some traction as we go on.
I would think so. And as we get closer to lock, those are things we'll all be monitoring. But when he's such a glaring price difference, I have a feeling he'll garner some ownership, and that's something we'll have to weigh.
Any interest in a T.Y. Hilton stack? Is that where you go if you
I mean,
throw him in there?
yeah, probably. Ty, he's fantastic, and if they're going to have any success against the Chargers, you would have to think he'll be involved. You mentioned Ebron, but overall, I think it's a very tough ask right out of the gate. That's a really brutal matchup, and I'll probably look elsewhere more often than not.
All right, we're on the same page. I like it. Let's move on to running back. We got a few. Well, let's not bury the lead here. Let's start with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Is Ezekiel Elliott going to play Week One
I
on the spot? Call
I
it.
I would have said yes, definitely, but I'm now shifting. I don't think so. I mean, I would be shocked if he's not there at some point, but it just feels like a couple games in, take the temperature and then reassess with him.
Yep, I agree. I think even as it gets closer, there's also a likelihood that he just won't even play, even if he does report. So that means Tony Pollard's very interesting. A rookie out of Memphis, huge pass catching ability. He had 11 yards per catch, I believe, out of the backfield last year. His price point is, let me pull it up. I don't have
4,500 on DraftKings, which isn't,
it. 40.
I mean, obviously it's appealing if he's going to be the bell cow back, but I will say it's not like he's the flat min, at say 3K.
Yeah.
Can catch
Yeah,
the
this is
ball, no doubt. They have a great matchup. They're at home against the Giants. So it's someone, and we're not going to get too in depth, but in cash and things like that, if we get indications he's going to get the volume, it's going to be hard to look away from a guy like that. But in tournaments, if he's garnering massive ownership, you're going to have some options, especially with, we're going to get to in a couple of minutes, the situation with the Chargers.
Yeah, Chargers situation is interesting. You're right. I was actually surprised that he was at 4,500 on TK, and I think he's priced up a little bit on FanDuel as well. You're in a range with like LaShawn McCoy, Kalen Balaj. Like if he's the bell cow, he's still a huge bargain and he's going to be owned. But I can see the merits of fading him because there's so many plays on this slate and so many running back plays. And this happens every year when DraftKings and FanDuel will release their pricing a month early. You're going to get these bargains. And so when you're going to roster some of these lower priced running backs, you really have to think about roster construction because low price running backs mean that the high price wide receivers are probably going to get more ownership, and you're going to see that ownership concentrate. I think. Let's move on to the San Diego Chargers. You brought them up. Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson. I'm saying this is way more likely that Melvin Gordon's out, though one of the beat writers did say the other day that he has a hunch that Melvin Gordon will return. Are you buying that hunch? Are you loading up on Eckler? What are you doing with this?
Gordon, it seems, I think most people would agree, this seems more dire for the Chargers in terms of maybe a long-term problem, not getting him in. Eckler and Jackson are interesting because they're both going to have prominent roles. We saw that after he got hurt last year, but Eckler's ability to catch the ball is super valuable. We mentioned they get the matchup with the Colts at home. It's a pretty good spot. Again, these guys are all going to be super polarizing in the ownership market. So it's going to be about finding that right blend. If you play all of them, you're going to really need some leverage elsewhere to differentiate.
This is again another spot where I thought Eckler would be priced down a little bit, and I'm not sure when the DK pricing came out, if it was before or after the Melvin Gordon holdout was announced, but he's $5,500 on DraftKings and $6,400 on FanDuel. That's not super cheap for a backup running back. If you're thinking of him as a backup, getting a bargain. If you look at some of the running backs he's priced around, we got Chris Carson in a plus matchup against Seattle. We got Marlon Mack. We got Devonta Freeman in a tough matchup against Minnesota. Dalvin Cook is just $500 more than him. Leonard Fournette going up against the 31st ranked Kansas City Chiefs run defense. So I'm not sold on the fact that Eckler is going to get a lot of ownership here, but I just like him anyways because the Colts allow a league high 140 targets to running backs last year, 110 catches, 830 yards. That I'm thinking Eckler is a great cash game play with huge upside here, and I think he's going to get probably a 65% snap share if Gordon's out.
Fair enough, and looking at the pricing, it does kind of glean, and I don't know it either, that maybe they had some of the Melvin Gordon situation priced in because he is with a number of feature backs when you look at the salary, so that may mitigate some of the ownership. That's a good point by you. The other thing I noticed, just to kind of keep going, at wide receiver, we don't have nearly as many major storylines in terms of key parts not missing. A couple here and there across the league, but nothing that stood out massively for me.
No, nothing. I've been watching like two things. I think I've got a really kind of sneaky tournament play that I'm hyped on, and I think it could blow up in my face. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Ben. I'm not quite sure. I've had my eye on one team in particular for week one. They have two injuries at the wide receiver spot that I'm watching. First is it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, I should say, up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Anytime you can play the Jacksonville Jaguars in NFL DFS, you have to do it, right?
That's correct.
Quarterback, so I'm intrigued by this because they're going up against the Chiefs in what should be a very high-scoring game. The Chiefs are porous defensively. They're going to be low-owned because of the Jaguars. We have Marquise Lee might open the year on the pup, but it's looking like he might play. I'm guessing he won't be a full go. DJ Chark was back a little bit last week, or yesterday, and he might play tonight a little bit, but he is possibly questionable for week one, which leaves not very many targets in this offense, so not very many wide receivers in this offense. I'm looking at Dede Westbrook and also Chris Conley, who was acquired from the Chiefs. A little bit of a revenge narrative here. $3,100. He was a really talented wide receiver out of college. He's got huge physical. He's got amazing physical attributes, and I think he's going to be like 0.032% owned in major tournaments. Do you agree with me at all? Am I completely out to lunch here?
I mean, I'm a huge Westbrook guy, so it doesn't take a lot for me to start mentioning him. It's an interesting situation with Foles there. They're going to have to put up points. I think there's no doubt about that. Conley has the revenge narrative. The prices are very enticing, and with lower price, the ownership people will catch that. That's going to be another way to save salary, though. You pay up elsewhere, you're going to be able to take a cheapie who could be thrust into a lot of volume in this game, especially if they fall behind. The spread, which we will certainly discuss on some of our betting shows, is a lot closer than I think most people think. And the Jaguars are poised to compete at home here. But there's no doubt that DD and Chris Conley could be major factors for Week 1 DFS.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Let's hope they don't get too much buzz heading in. The only other team I was keeping an eye on was the Dolphins. With the Kenny Stills situation, with Albert Wilson injured, we could be in a situation where Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are getting a lot of action. Problem is, they go up against the Baltimore Ravens in Week 1, and the only thing from this game I'm going to be playing, I think, on that side of the ball is the Baltimore Ravens defense against this terrible Miami team. Any chance you're going to go with any of these guys if Stills gets booted and Wilson's out?
I really don't think so. The opportunity is there, and that's certainly one part of the puzzle, but it's just a spot where the offense as a whole, I wouldn't be stunned to see the Dolphins put an anemic performance out there in Week 1. The Ravens are going to control that game on the ground and lean on the defense. So uphill battle for all the positions with the Dolphins.
Yeah, Baltimore D special team is going to be number 1 owned, I think, heading into that week. Tight end, Jordan Reed just suffered his 7th concussion. Sounds like he's going to play. Any Vernon Davis love at like near the bare min on both salaries if he can't go?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on what Jordan Reed's status is. I like him in life. I hope he bounces back. Could be a valuable asset, and that's a team that's really hurting for pass catchers. So Vernon Davis, I still worry, even if he gets maybe some additional targets, about the ceiling, and I'm not sure that I look to him even for the salary savings.
No, I agree with you there. I think even just because Hunter Henry is also on this slate at just $3,900, and Philadelphia had the number 1 least amount of fantasy points allowed to tight ends. So that's going to be a no-go for me as well. Let's wrap things up with the New York Giants, who are a little bit thin at wide receiver. Sterling Shepard is banged up. Golden Tate is out for 4 games. Who are you upgrading in this offense? Is this a straight up Evan Ingram spot? Because he caught fire last year when Odell Beckham Jr. was out, and he torched the Cowboys last year with a 12-148 2-line in 2 games. How much Ingram are you going to have at his price point on FanDuel and DraftKings?
I have a feeling I get over the field on him. They're a team that even with injuries, I don't know if it's going to go to players that maybe weren't prominent roles. I think they might just try to lean on Saquon and Ingram even more if that's possible. So I expect a busy game for both of them. Ingram's the guy I think is going to poise for a big season. You mentioned without Beckham, he had some big splits, and starting against the Cowboys, they're probably going to be trailing. He should get a ton of targets in this one.
Ton of targets. He's one of my favorite tight end plays of the week. I think he's going to be popular. $4,800 on DraftKings, though, so I'm also going to be overweight on the field. You got anything else that you're noticing? Any other holdouts? Any other injuries that you're monitoring heading into Week 1?
Not really. I think obviously stay tuned. We are going to have plenty of full breakdowns from every corner and every aspect of this slate. But these are just the broad strokes that I think it's important to get a feel on before we get into the nitty gritty. And I think some of these are going to become major storylines for that first opening DFS slate.
And we are both in agreement that Nick Foles and Dede Westbrook are winning someone $1 million in Week 1. So you heard it here first.
Yep.
What's that? Awesome. All right. Thanks, Ben. We're going to be back next week. We got so much content for you. Stay tuned. Check out the osmo.com main page and follow along with all the content that's coming out. We will have lots starting Monday. So let's get into this. I'm excited. It's going to be a great season.